Could you show me that clip again? Wasn't wearing my glasses.
Fail at this case, and I will split you up.
No snake has set foot in Zootopia in forever.
There's a snake!
What if Zootopia was real? What if the crimes committed in that beautifully animated, perfectly crafted world of prey and predator actually happened in a real courtroom, with real lawyers, real judges, and real prison sentences? Because here's the thing nobody is talking about. Zootopia is not just a kid's movie. It never was. Strip away the talking animals, the colorful neighborhoods, the cute fox jokes, and what you actually have is one of the most legally complex, morally disturbing, politically layered crime dramas ever made. We are talking about government corruption at the highest level, mass civil rights violations, psychological torture, biological weapons, conspiracy to overthrow an entire political system. And now, with Zootopia 2 officially confirmed and the fandom absolutely exploding with theories, speculation, and hype, we have to ask the question that no one has bothered to ask seriously. If the villains of Zootopia, the original and the ones likely coming in the sequel, were tried in a real court of law, using real legal principles, how long would each of them actually spend behind bars? Not cartoon prison. Not movie prison where the bad guy waves goodbye and we never think about them again. Real, actual, prison, time. Because when you run the numbers, when you look at what these characters actually did, the results are absolutely shocking. Some of these sentences will terrify you. Some will surprise you completely. And one of them might just be the longest fictional criminal sentence you have ever heard calculated for an animated movie. Stay right here, because this is going to change how you watch Zootopia forever. We are going to treat each villain like a real defendant. We are going to look at what they did, the scale of it, the intent behind it, and the aggravating and mitigating circumstances a real judge would consider. And we are covering this across the full decade of Zootopia. Let's start from the beginning. Don Bellwether. The fluffy little sheep with the soft voice, the broken glasses, and the most meticulously planned criminal conspiracy in animated movie history. Let's just lay out exactly what she did, because the list is longer than most people remember. Number 1. She orchestrated and directed a conspiracy to poison multiple predator citizens of Zootopia using a biologically active serum derived from Night Howler plants. This serum forcibly altered the neurological and behavioral state of the victims without their consent. In real legal terms, this qualifies as administering a noxious substance with intent to cause harm, which in most jurisdictions carries sentences of 5 to 15 years per count. Number 2. She used her position as assistant mayor, a position of public trust and government authority, to deliberately manipulate city policy, public fear, and media perception to advance a personal political agenda. This is textbook corruption of public office combined with conspiracy to incite civil unrest. Number 3. She directly participated in the attempted murder of Officer Judy Hopps. Yes, she pulled the trigger on that dart gun herself. In legal terms, that is attempted murder in the first degree, premeditated, with a dangerous weapon. In most American states, that alone carries 15 to life. Number 4. She falsified evidence, manipulated public records, and orchestrated a media disinformation campaign that caused mass psychological harm to an entire segment of the population. Number 5. She was the intellectual author of all of this. She planned it, she funded it, she directed subordinates. Now let's do the math. Conspiracy to administer noxious substances. Multiple counts, at 10 years each. Conservatively across the known victims equals somewhere around 60 to 80 years just here. Corruption of public office and abuse of government power, 25 years. Attempted murder of Judy Hopps, 15 to life. Conspiracy to commit civil rights violations at a citywide scale. Federal charges, which in a human legal system could add another 30 to 50 years. Now, in most legal systems, sentences can run concurrently, meaning simultaneously. But given the premeditated scale of this conspiracy, the deliberate targeting of an entire biological class of citizens, and the attempted murder of a law enforcement officer, a judge who takes seriously the civil rights dimension of what she did, the deliberate attempt to destroy an entire class of citizens through biological manipulation and manufactured fear, could absolutely stack these charges in a way that puts her at 200 years plus. Bellwether is going to die in prison, full stop. The soft voice and the broken glasses do not save you when you have committed one of the most calculated hate crime-driven conspiracies in legal history. Mr. Big and the crime family. Now, let's talk about someone a little more complicated. Mr. Big, the tiny Arctic shrew who runs organized crime in Tundra Town and is one of the most terrifying characters in the entire film, despite being the size of your thumb. Here is the legal reality of Mr. Big. He is clearly the head of an organized criminal enterprise. The movie does not hide this. He has enforcers. He has a territory. He has a code of conduct enforced through violence, specifically through being iced, which is either a killing or a severe punishment left deliberately ambiguous. Mr. Big also cooperates with law enforcement. He helps Judy and Nick. He provides critical assistance in solving the case. A good defense attorney combined with a cooperation agreement could dramatically reduce his sentence. But cooperation agreements only go so far when you are the boss of an organized crime family with decades of criminal history. Realistic sentence for Mr. Big, even with cooperation, 40 to 70 years. Given his age and size, that is effectively a life sentence, which, given what he represents, is probably about right. The Manchas and vehicle villains, the Night Howler victims. What about the predators who were dosed with Night Howler serum and committed violent acts while under its influence? Mr. Manchas, the Black Jaguar. The various other predators shown in news footage going berserk. What is their legal status? In real law, there is a doctrine called involuntary intoxication. If a person is given a substance without their knowledge or consent that causes them to lose control of their behavior and commit a criminal act, they generally cannot be held fully criminally responsible for that act. The criminal responsibility transfers to the person who administered the substance. This is actually one of the most legally fascinating aspects of the Zootopia story, and it massively increases Bellwether's culpability even further. Every violent act committed by a dosed predator is an additional charge on Bellwether's indictment under the theory that she was the proximate cause of each of those violent acts. Mr. Manchas and others would likely face no prison time if their attorneys could demonstrate the involuntary intoxication defense, which, given the publicly available evidence about the Night Howler conspiracy, would not be a difficult case to make. They are victims, not criminals, and the law, at its best, recognizes that distinction. Section 4. Mayor Leodore, Lionheart. Mayor Lionheart is one of the most legally interesting cases in the entire film. Because unlike Bellwether, Lionheart is not evil. His motivations are arguably defensible. He was trying to prevent a citywide panic. He was trying to protect predators from a witch hunt. His heart, whatever else you want to say, was not in the same place as Bellwether's. But none of that changes what he actually did. He knowingly and secretly imprisoned citizens of Zootopia in a private facility without any due process, legal authority, or judicial oversight. The predators he locked away had committed no crime. They were sick. And rather than finding a legal, transparent solution, he chose to hide them, cut them off from their families, and maintain that secret through deception at the highest levels of government. However, Lionheart's cooperation with the investigation after his arrest, his lack of malicious intent, and the clearly defensive nature of his actions would be powerful mitigating factors in sentencing. A realistic sentence for Lionheart, accounting for mitigation, cooperation, and intent, would likely fall in the range of 20 to 40 years. With parole, he might serve 15. That is still devastating. That is still the end of his political career forever. But it is a fundamentally different outcome from Bellwether, which reflects the fundamental difference in their moral characters, even if their legal violations overlapped in category. The Duke of Weselton villain crossover theory. There is a theory, long-running in the Disney fandom, that the Duke of Weselton from Frozen and various background characters connect across the Disney universe in interesting ways. While this is not canon, and we are not treating it as such, it raises a fun question about how corruption at the governmental level, a theme that Zootopia and Frozen actually share in surprisingly deep ways. But let's move on, because the Zootopia 2 analysis is where things get truly explosive. The Zootopia 2 villain landscape, 2026 theories, and confirmed details. Zootopia 2 has been officially confirmed. And while the studio has kept the villain situation deliberately mysterious, the fandom analysis, combined with what we know from concept art leaks, studio interviews, and the thematic trajectory of the first film, gives us a very strong picture of where the story is going. The first film was about systemic prejudice hidden behind the mask of a progressive society. The second film, based on everything we know, is going to go deeper, not just individual corruption, but institutional corruption. Not just one bad actor, but an entire system that has been quietly rotting underneath Zootopia's shiny surface for years. What does that mean legally? It means the villains of Zootopia 2 are likely going to be even harder to prosecute. Because systemic villains, institutional villains, villains who operate through legal structures rather than against them, are the hardest kind to put in prison. Let's look at the most likely villain archetypes based on confirmed themes and credible leak analysis. Section 7. The Shadow Organization Villain. The dominant theory, supported by multiple credible sources and concept art analysis, is that Zootopia 2 will introduce a shadow organization, a group that operates not by breaking the law, but by writing it. A cabal of powerful animals, likely a mix of predators and prey, who have been quietly shaping Zootopia's policies, economics, and social structures for generations. If this theory is correct, these characters represent the most legally complex villains in any animated film ever attempted. Because here is the problem with prosecuting a shadow organization. They have lawyers, better lawyers than the prosecution. They have political connections. They have technically legal structures surrounding every illegal act. Every crime is insulated by 3 layers of plausible deniability. The corporate villain. Another heavily theorized villain type for Zootopia 2 is the corporate predator. Not a literal predator, though possibly that too, but a business entity, a corporation, a pharmaceutical company, a media empire that has been profiting from the exact social divisions that the first film exposed. This is enormously timely, and the writers at Disney absolutely know it. If Zootopia 2 introduces a corporation that has been deliberately manufacturing and amplifying social fear to sell products, manipulate markets, or maintain political influence, the legal charges here are fascinating. Fraud, the deliberate creation of a false product, service, or situation to extract money or power from the public. Federal fraud charges carry 5 to 20 years per count. The redeemed villain, or anti-villain. Every great Disney sequel has at least one character who occupies the space between villain and victim, someone whose crimes are real but whose circumstances are genuinely tragic. Someone who makes the audience feel something complicated. The Zootopia universe is perfect for this kind of character. Imagine a predator who has been systemically excluded from economic opportunity in Zootopia for their entire life, who turned to crime, not out of ideology but out of desperation. Who committed real crimes with real victims, but whose story reveals something deeply uncomfortable about who Zootopia actually protects and who it leaves behind. Legally, this character's crimes are still crimes. The sentence is still real. The legal system of Zootopia itself. Here is something we have to address before we wrap up. Everything we have been discussing assumes that the legal system of Zootopia is capable of fair, impartial justice. But is it? The entire premise of the first film is that Zootopia's legal and social institutions are deeply compromised by bias. The police department actively discouraged Judy Hopps from pursuing a case that turned out to be the most important case in the city's history. The mayor was engaged in illegal imprisonment. The assistant mayor was orchestrating a biological hate crime. Every institution failed. So, when we talk about how long these villains would spend in prison, we are also implicitly asking whether Zootopia's justice system is capable of delivering real justice at all. The answer, based on the first film, is complicated. The individual actors, Judy, Nick, the honest detectives, they can achieve justice in individual cases, but the system itself is still deeply compromised. And that is precisely where Zootopia 2 has to go. Not just catching the new villain, but forcing Zootopia to reckon with whether its institutions can actually deliver the justice it promises. That is the legal drama underneath the animated surface. And it is what makes Zootopia genuinely unlike any other animated franchise in history. Final summary and verdict section. Let's bring it all home with the final verdict. Dawn Bellwether, minimum 85 to 120 years. More realistically, 150 to 200 years, when all charges are stacked. She dies in prison. No realistic path to release in any lifetime. Mayor Lionheart, 20 to 40 years with mitigation. Likely serves 12 to 15 with parole and cooperation credit. His political career is over, but his life is not. Mr. Big, 40 to 70 years, even with cooperation credit. Effective life sentence given his age. The Night Howler victims. No prison time if properly defended. They are victims of a biological crime, not criminals. Zootopia 2 Shadow Organization. Leadership. Life without parole if prosecutors can break through the legal insulation. More likely outcome in a realistic system, 10 to 20 years on provable charges, with the full conspiracy never completely exposed in public record. Zootopia 2 Corporate Villain. Life without parole for the CEO if biological agent involvement is proven. 25 to 40 years if limited to fraud and conspiracy charges. Zootopia 2 Redeemed Anti-Villain. 7 to 15 years with mitigation. The most legally interesting sentence because it forces the audience to ask whether that is just. Bellwether from prison pulling strings in the sequel. Additional consecutive charges that extend her sentence by decades, effectively ensuring she will never see freedom again. Here's the thing about Zootopia that most people miss even after watching it a dozen times. It is not a movie about whether the bad guys get caught. It is a movie about whether the systems we build to protect us are actually protecting us, or whether they are quietly, carefully, systematically protecting the people who built them at everyone else's expense. The villain spending time in prison is satisfying. It should be satisfying. Justice should feel like something. But the deeper question, the one Zootopia 2 has an extraordinary opportunity to ask, is whether justice is really being served when the individual criminals are locked away but the systems that enabled them, the biases, the institutional blindness, the economic structures that benefit from division, are left completely intact. That is the question that makes Zootopia not a kid's movie. That is the question that makes it one of the most important animated films of the last 20 years. And if Zootopia 2 has the courage to ask it honestly, with all the complexity that question deserves, it is going to be one of the greatest sequels ever made. If you made it this far, drop a comment below with your prison sentence estimate for the villain you think is getting off too easy in this analysis. And tell me your Zootopia 2 villain theory, because some of the stuff the fandom has been cooking is genuinely incredible. Like the video if this changed how you think about Zootopia. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this. And share it with the one person in your life who will absolutely lose their mind watching a legal breakdown of a Disney movie about talking animals. See you in the next one.